Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Ball Over Passion. I'm your boy at George V underscore AFC. We got Curran here, and guys, we are here on time for one of the very first times. We've managed to sort ourselves together. I hope everyone's doing well on this fine midweek. Curran, mate, how you doing? You good?
Yeah, all good. Looking forward to this game tomorrow. Hopefully this is our last serious, semi-serious Europa League game for a while. So
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see what happens.
Well, I mean, like really quickly, we might as well you kind of have to start with kind of the debate on um in terms of just like how hard do we go and kind of when's the right time to really put all your eggs into the one basket in terms of, hey, are we going to be going full strength here, are we going to be doing mixing and matching? I mean, we're not going to go full strength obviously from goalkeeper to the striker, but I think fundamentally, when you look at it, this is the game to go harder in. And from my perspective, you've got Forest at home coming up on the weekend, whereas the following week you've got Chelsea away at Stamford Bridge. And when you're kind of going between the two, which, if you're going to be fatigued, let's say, which again, I really hate this word because the fatigue is the wrong word, but let's just use it because I think it's the narrative everybody likes. But if you were to be fatigued and you could choose a game to be fatigued, it would be this weekend at home against Forest. Like, that for me is definitely a game state where you're gonna have a lot more of the ball, you're gonna be able to dominate possession, you're gonna be able to have the security of the home crowd, so you're just less likely to be running around and being in a game state that's more transition based, and so fundamentally just gonna run less. So for me, you would choose this game, even if you were kind of debating which of those 2 to do, even though Zurich is definitely the easier opponent, let's say. But, having an eyes towards kind of the next weekend's fixtures, for me, it's really quite easy that you basically concede, kind of in this game to make sure that you just do the business. And really, let's just repeat, you only need to get a point, to secure top spot in the group. So, in terms of what we actually need, we only really need a draw. We just can't lose, right? So you do those things, then you manage to get out of there with what you came for. And I definitely agree that it's a very important game for us because the impact of not doing it um, is really big later on in the season when you basically have to add another stage or another. Is it two fixtures or is it one fixture? I'm pretty sure it's two fixtures.
It's two legs, but one
Yeah,
fixture.
exactly. So it's like it's one team, but like two fixtures though, right? Because it would be home and away leg. So you are taking away two games kind of later on into the season. But I was going to go to you. In terms of look, in terms of the dip of what you may have seen in a couple areas. We had a lot of intensity in the middle of the park, but also we had a lot of structure issues, which you really highlighted in yesterday's review. So it was just for me when you are looking at this stuff, I don't like the fatigue, tiredness narrative when you ignore structure issues that are caused by your own team. Like those two are very separate things, and when you start to look at it, it's not as binary as tired, not tired, fit, not fit, which is what a lot of people like to do on kind of these debates. And so, a big thing for me is when we have a look at what we're going to be facing this against this PSV team. I think the big threat for me is Nani Madueke. Like he's one of the players that I've always felt like is their strongest player. Um, despite having Xavi Simmons and Cody Gakpo, of course, but for me, Nani Madueke carries the most threat for them. He's the most physical, intense winger that they've got, and he's also somebody that translates quite well to um, things that we would struggle with. A tall, physical winger that can come inside, can go both ways, but also is very quick on the counter. And so, unlike Xavi Simmons, who I think has difficulties in creating separation physically, Noni Madueke does not have that. So he would be a very big player to kind of really focus on. But fundamentally, looking at the game, current, like I wanted to give you your chance here. If you had to rotate, and let's go with the tiredness narrative, because I feel like I don't agree with it, and we could argue till the cows come home about it, just medically, how it makes zero sense. But let's ignore that because that's not fun. Say you were tired, like where are you going? Are you going full strength in this one? Or are you going full strength the next week?
Well, just off pure evidence, we've never gone full strength in this competition. I mean, we've always rotated to some degree. I don't see a reason to stop now. I think the tiredness argument is fine if you want to go that way, but the thing is, it's not going to get easier, and other teams have to deal with it as well. So I think that if you're going to say that the team's tired, the next step should be okay. If the team's tired, how do we get the team fresh? Because for this entire cycle, if we're going for UCL, we're going for Premier Leagues, we're going for FA Cups, Carling Cups, whatever you want, you're going to have to be able to keep a squad fresh. You're going to have to be able to keep the players invested and involved to come in and perform roles. So I just think that I think it's a redundant argument, because what's the point in claiming tiredness when we're going to have players that are tired? It's how we manage those players, and I think that's the critical issue for me.
Well, and part of the biggest argument that I always levy is let's fast forward to next season. Let's meet our season objectives in terms of what everybody believes we will have to do. Again, at this point, the amount of points that we've achieved in the league would mean that we would have to break history to not become the top four. Just looking across all of the final fixtures of the Premier League, so just based on the amount of points that we've accumulated to date, historically we are a shoe-in for top four. And if you do have Champions League football, I don't understand this kind of metric of not playing people 2 or 3 days a week, because in the Champions League you're gonna have to do that. I don't know. I know it's been a while since we've been in there, and people may have forgotten. But in terms of the group stages, when you're going in, there might be one or two teams in a group maximum that you're going to be resting for. However, half the group you're still absolutely going to be playing full strength for, and um, you know you're going to have at minimum four fixtures within that group stage that you're going to have to um, potentially play your strongest team and potentially go 2 or 3 days a week. So the idea that this squad needs to be babied when literally in 12 months they're going to have to be doing the same thing, it doesn't make any logical sense to me. So you need to balance things. You need to understand that not everybody's the same situation. For example, Gabriel Jesus is not tired. He's not unfit. He's in poor form. They're very different things. And ironically, you want to play him into form. So right now, Gabby Jesus individually probably needs minutes as much as anybody in the squad. Then you've got to balance that with Eddie Nketiah, making sure that he's fresh, having not been featured. But we need to play Gabby Jesus into form. So how do you orient these players to play them and balance some of the needs of the squad from squad players, making sure that they're fresh and they're relied upon, but also keeping your first team players in the best form that you can. And that is definitely something for me that we've struggled with, but we've kind of danced around the topic a little bit. So let's get into really the squad lineup. And I think, Curran, you've got some lineup graphics for us. We'll pop them up here and we'll have a little bit of a debate about who should go in. And then we can end kind of tactically in terms of what we're going to see. But I think we saw a lot of what PSV are about in terms of a team, but we didn't really see what they wanted to do in possession because we didn't allow it. We were so dominant in that reverse fixture. But yeah, I'll let you pop up the graphic, and what we'll do is we'll talk about kind of the debates in terms of course, left back debate and like who needs rest and who doesn't. Sorry, go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there we are. So basically, what we're looking for here is you're looking for a lineup that has a couple of issues. I think before we get it up, I think that we should discuss, I think, Nelson or Martinelli. I think we need to discuss a couple of different things in terms of do we see Saka? Do we see Marquinhos? I've got something here, but I'm not sure how accurate it will be. So yeah, I don't know about Madueke. That's an issue. Gakpo, obviously, on that side, I've gone with the same side they've gone with last game. And for us, I think the main issues is will Saka play, Tierney or Tomiyasu, Nelson or Martinelli? I mean, these are some issues I want to discuss. So, where do you want to start with me?
I think if you pop that back up, I think let's attack the left hand side, because for me, what was very clear was he had his wingers tracking back in the reverse fixture with PSV. And one thing that I really think he could do is I don't think he'll trust Nelson from the jump because he does want to start the game. And so one of the big things for me is I think he'll have Gabby Jesus be the left winger in this game. And I do think he'll play with Eddie up top. And it's really the only change that I have to your 11, Curran, just in general, because um, when you have a look at it, the only thing potentially could be a question mark at right center back in terms of whether or not you go with William Saliba or not. Um, and for me, there's no sense to do that because William Saliba's had a couple instances where he's made some mistakes, and so I think for me, it's fine to not have him in the game. And Rob Holding had an excellent game in the reverse fixture. We
Mm.
kind of talked about it in the review, but he was really responsible for dictating a lot of really great buildup. And look, I've got one of the biggest Rob Balding agendas on the planet, but the boy was good, and so you have to reward good performances like that. So I have no problem with him starting. I definitely would worry against Nani Madueke, but that's kind of offset by having Tomiyasu back at right back in a zone where he's a lot more comfortable with, and you basically match up their best threat with kind of your best 1v1 defenders. And so that's why having a fullback pairing of Kieran Tierney and Tomiyasu is so vital, because on the right, whether or not it's Chavi Simmons or Nani Madueke, I think having Kieran Tierney is a must. Kieran Tierney's cameos have been phenomenal. It is time that he stops being disrespected for having this aesthetic technical bias. And
Mhm.
we play the boy because he's been in good form. He showed it. He deserves it. And he's the best matchup against Chavi Simmons or Nani Madueke. And the only kind of differences I'd have is, Reese Nelson, for me, he hasn't done enough to be confident in dictating play, A, but also B, I think Gabby Jesus needs game time. He's somebody for me that has been out of form, and specifically technically. Like, I think one of the biggest things with me right now is I find that he's dropping too deep far too often. So I'd much rather him, if he's going to be wanting to demand ball to feet, get him in a role that does that the most, right? So if he's gonna drop and he's gonna do those things, Gabby Jesus on the left wing is much more ball to feet than he is on the right wing, or even than he is at striker, right? So if you're gonna have somebody that's gonna naturally want to go and touch the ball because they're not in form, then make sure that you're pushing them A in zones that they want to be in, but also B, that you're maximizing his ability when he does that, right? So the biggest thing for me is having Kieran Tierney left back, because in possession, what it does is it'll push Gabby Jesus next to Eddie Nketiah, and then you'll finally get that kind of preseason chemistry that they really showed at the beginning of the season, where A, you've got somebody that likes to combine nicely, and Eddie Nketiah can also drift left-hand side as well. He has a beautiful bag of dropping into the left half space and driving forward on like solo runs. So for me, it would be a very fluid front three in which Gabby Jesus and Eddie Nketiah can really dynamically change between both areas. But then you've got Kieran Tierney high and wide holding the width, and it allows you to basically push back the Chavi Simmons or the Nani Madueke threat that you're gonna have on the wings from these guys. So in terms of kind of, I guess, the midfield question tomorrow, I mean, it is a question. I would have Fabio Vieira start. I think having him
I
come,
think he does start, but who plays next to him? I personally think it will be Xhaka, just for the.
it has to. It has to be.
It has to be right.
It has
Like
to be
it.
Granite. Yeah. And
Sorry.
it has to be, I don't know, like, I mean, the idea is, if we do want to go in to really win the game, I think I would hold off on Thomas Partey, because again, he is so important to what we have, and we don't really have a backup there. So that for me is a very dangerous area. So I'll absolutely have Sambi Lakunga play. Um, but I think the debate is Fabio Vieira versus Odegaard in that last spot, because for me it's Sambi and Xhaka, and who do you balance that with? And so if you're gonna have Kieran Tierney high and wide, and again, you're gonna have the idea that Granite will not be that final third operator, right? Because by having
Mm-hmm.
Kieran Tierney high and wide, you're going to drop him in, and Gabby Jesus is going to be that inside channel. In order to balance that, for me, you need Fabio Vieira. So the dynamic switch in midfield, right? So part of the reasons why you get people not playing the best way is you have to look at balance. So if Granit Xhaka is a lot higher, Martin Odegaard works as kind of a secondary controller in a midfield three. But if you switch that and you make Xhaka the secondary controller, because you have Kieran Tierney high and wide, and you've got Gabby Jesus as your left wing stroke center forward with Eddie Nketiah, then that means that the third midfielder has to be a final action player, and it has to be on the right, because Granite is going to be that secondary controller on the left. And so, just natural balance wise, you need a Fabio Vieira's profile a lot more than you need an Odegaard in that sense. Ideally, it would be Emil Smith Rowe in that role, but like, Fabio Vieira is the next best that we've got there. So for me,
I
that's what
mean,
makes
the other thing is if we had Emil, we could have tried what we tried in preseason with when Fabio's first introduced with the Fabio right wing ESR right centre mid experiment as well, and I think
sense.
that was something that we wanted to do to give Bukayo that rotation as well. But obviously, Emil's been unfit, and we've had to deal with that. So um, yeah, it's a shame. There's a lot of things that could have been tried. For example, with El Neni, with Lakonga forward. I think this was an opportunity missed because of injuries. This group stage for me personally, because I felt like we could have seen the El Neni Lakonga experiment with Lakonga central midfield, left centre midfield. We could have seen the ESR and Fabio experiment on the right. There's a couple of things that I think it would have been nice to see, but injuries just not played out that way. Um, the other thing I was going to talk about is Reese, because Reese, for me, if he's coming on for the 60th minute or 65th minute, and I just feel like he's not really getting this up to speed quickly, I personally would start him with Eddie. I think that would be interesting to see. I don't like Eddie off the left wing race recently. I think he's lacking when he's in confidence, when he's in good form. I feel like he's much more dynamic off the left wing, or maybe it's because he's sort of partnered with Kieran. Maybe that will unlock him a bit at the left wing spot because he's got that ability to come inside a bit more. I just don't like him touchline. I don't think it's providing him enough chances. So if we're going to go with, for example, say he does put Tommy at left back again, then it has to be Reese, because I feel like Reese coming inside, combining with players and allowing for opportunities on the overlap. I think that would be interesting to see. Whereas with Eddie, I don't like Eddie wide. It's the same with Marcelli at the weekend. It's just sort of like, why is he so wide? Get him in the box where he's going to attack space and make those runs. So I wanted to ask you about that, because for me, I think that it depends on the left back, the left wing option.
Well, no, so I think the big thing for me is I look at Sambi Lakanga, and that's who I'm worried about. So if I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at a midfield three and I'm looking at who's potentially vital in transitions, because again, we didn't really see PSV have a touch in possession. We were
No.
so good, in fact, that I'm just going to put this up because it's beautiful to see. Ruud van Nistelrooy talked about it. Defensively as a team, they were far deeper than they really wanted to. They couldn't beat the press, and they just they really couldn't get out of their own half. And so for me, when you kind of have something like this, you're unable to see again really the potential of PSV on the ball, and that's not going to be the case now at home. They're a much better team at home. So they're going to look to dominate the ball, and they're going to have periods of pressure. And when you have periods of pressure there, how do you stop excellent out-in wingers, which we have, by the way? And for me, that is just simply by crowding the center and making sure that they don't have balls that you can feed through, and you cut off their supply. And how do
Mm,
you do that? And if you're going to have Sambi Lakonga as your starting six, what do you worry about in that scenario? For me, it's the big spaces. So if you've got something like what happened on the weekend with Granit Xhaka, in which you've got him closing the distances with Sambi and being very tight together, that's something that means that you can have a better central block and you can stop those balls going through. That for me is the biggest question, because that basically means you've got Xhaka deeper and it answers your left wing question, right? So if you're basically betting on PSV being a little bit more adventurous, you're betting on the fact that Sambi is going to be playing in the six away, and you want to make sure that he's got a partner close to him so that he doesn't get caught out positionally, awareness and whatnot. Then you do have to make sure that you got somebody there that can win second balls, right? You have to
yeah.
make sure that is somebody close to him so that the distances aren't too big, and then he doesn't get swallowed up by the game. And for me, that doesn't really happen with a Martin Odegaard in the team. And I think the difference is, I would just argue, is he in our best 11? I think he's in our best form 11. I think one of his ceilings in terms of where or not he stays in the role that he's doing, that's a debate for another day. But right now, he's kind of in one of the best forms in the squad. He had an excellent game the last game, and everything was running through him. I didn't agree in him being subbed, but um, him playing changes the midfield dynamic. You would push Xhaka up, and the debate isn't about Martin Odegaard's ability here. It's the fact that, do you want Granit Xhaka higher or lower? That is definitely going to be the change that you need to focus on midfield wise. And in terms of right center mid, I mean, again, for me, I've always felt that Emil Smith Rowe has a lot more potential in that role. He's a lot more dynamic. We just haven't seen it yet, and a lot of people haven't seen it from Huddersfield. But right now, in form, he's definitely our best right central midfielder. But again, you need to ask what are the roles that the midfield is going to be doing. And if you're going to have Sambi Lakanga as a six, do you want Martin Odegaard being the one that's closest to him in the pivot? Like, is that going to solve more for you? And again, that tactic maybe works against the low block. That maybe tactic works against a team that you're not built in transitions, but that's not PSV. And so again, absolutely, I think for me, you need to ask the question: what do you want your midfield to do? And this kind of leads into this question. I'll let you do it, Curran. But again, like the idea that you see both Odegaard and Vieira together in a Europa League playoff, but just in general, it comes down to midfield role, right? Because again, Odegaard is a secondary controller. He's not somebody that's going to be a penetrator in the final third, and Vieira can do that. So in theory, these are two players that can work together, but collectively, do they both win enough second balls that your six, who is Sambi Lakanga in these Europa League games, who doesn't have the same ability as Thomas Partey defensively, can that work? I'm not too sure. Now, if you have Thomas Partey there as the anchor, then I think he is so good. He is so elite at winning second balls. You make up for the fact that the pair aren't the best at it. You could maybe get away with it against a low block team that aren't very good, maybe a Zurich in theory. But again, it's just not something that I would do because ultimately it doesn't have the best balance between the three. And you put a lot of emphasis on the anchor in that pairing because both of them aren't the greatest at second balls. I think you've got a lot of pressure. Both Odegaard and Vieira are active in the final third. They'll look to try to recover and press people, but they don't have the greatest winning in their duels with second balls. So for me, it's just imbalanced. You need at least two in a three that are able to do that. So
Yeah.
I
So
want you to have basically your opinion on that.
I just think that you restrict your ability to win second balls with those two. I think that's the main thing for me. I think you're not as active in recovering the ball as you would be with, say, a Xhaka there, who is elite at that. It's his bread and butter. Um, I think that you don't have the physical capability to play that eight combination yet. Um, I think that Odegaard is very good in terms of dropping deep and participating in build up. I think he's very good in. He's improved a lot, I should say, on his ability to release the ball in the final third. I think he's been actively. I think he's actively taken a consideration in that, and he's released a lot quicker this season. But for me, I think if you're going to have one, you can't have the other. I think you need in transition, you need the runners to win duels as well in that midfield. And I just don't think without Xhaka you can do that right now. In the future, when Fabio, grows into his body a bit more, maybe. But at this moment in time, there's no way you can do it. If we had, for example, another six, we had El Neni. You could do El Neni, Lokonga, Vieira, or something like that, or
Part of it
Lokonga.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, like part of it is also tactical, current because like at Porto, he was used as a secondary controller quite a bit,
Mhm.
especially in his later cameos because they lacked anybody to really do it. So it's not a fact that he can't do it. It's a little bit more for me. He tactically doesn't understand the system as much. He's only been here and he missed a preseason. He was unable to get into the rotations. He was injured, and so really, you're looking at the last 4 to 6 weeks of him being fit. And even then, that's a boost because he didn't really come fit until the beginning of October, right? So he's really only had a month with the squad. And so um, for me, it's just too soon. It really is too soon to ask him to do a role that requires intense understanding between your center backs and when to fill and making sure those rotations a little bit more. And that for me is kind of the biggest issue. But just looking back at kind of the best build up players, and those first three is going to be super important to me again. And there's Sambi, but I think in this role, it has to be said we need to make sure that we're getting our players in positions that they're very comfortable with. And Granit Xhaka being super important in build up, along with Rob Holding, is a role that he's no stranger to. He's been a secondary controller quite a bit. And so for me, if you're convinced that you're going to be playing Sambi Lakanga, then I need to get somebody there that I know is going to win second balls because I'm afraid of their wingers and the transition threats. We need to control transitions and kind of do exactly what we did at home, where we didn't allow them an opportunity to really get going. And from beyond the 15th minute, PSV didn't really touch the ball. And that, for me, had a big part to do with build up in terms of who we did and who we tasked with certain roles. And so, again, I need Kieran Tierney and Tommy Ass as my fullback pairing. I need Gabby Jesus. I don't need Reese Nelson at left wing. Or if you're going to do it, put Eddie and Ketty. Like, I need a diligent worker on the left wing because their right wing is scary. And Nani Madueke, I think, for me, has a very good chance of starting. If I was, Ruben Nistelrooy, I'd have Chavi Simmons in the 10, and I would have, Nani Madueke out at right wing. And you'd have Till kind of being the backboard that they work off of, right? And you've got two players that are technical inside. And, that is something that we may see. We may see a super attacking lineup by them. But even if we don't, I think their wingers consistently have had the biggest threat, both in Europe and at home. It's where they create most of their goals, and they are a different beast at home. I can't keep repeating this enough. PSV will be a different team than they were when we faced them at the Emirates. They will be a lot better at home. They will be a lot more willing to put their foot on the ball. And they showed in the second half, by the way, in the last 5-10 minutes, when they put their foot on the ball, they can worry you, and they are a decent team because they have such good threats out wide. So they're always going to have a chance when you've got that. But Colonel, I'll have you answer this. So just really quickly, do you think Odegaard and Vieira could play with El Neni?
I think that's an interesting question because the thing is with if you look at what Odegaard and Vieira bring when it comes to El Neni is someone that keeps it ticking over. He's a circulator. He's able to keep the distances short between his midfield, and he's able to basically distribute short and quickly. He's not someone that's going to be expansive. He's not overly vertical. He's very safe in his passing. What I think Vieira brings, and this is why I choose Vieira in this situation, I think Vieira is the opposite. He's someone that will be vertical. He's someone that be that final third push of a pusher and that tempo raiser. That's someone to raise the tempo in the final third and create something. Odegaard and El Neni on the pitch, I feel like you need someone in that midfield to really push the tempo and really lift the speed of play. I don't feel Odegaard and El Neni together do that. I think Xhaka and El Neni together obviously provide a level of defensive control and transition control as well as being able to win second balls and perform admirably under any block. What Vieira brings is that spark that you need to move the ball into the final third to get the ball between the lines. So I think Vieira works better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I think he does. And again, if you can take anything away from this preview, and we'll kind of wrap it up, it's about midfield roles and understanding what you want to do and who's your weak points, right? So if you've got Sambi Lakanga and you understand what type of six he is, let's move beyond the debate whether he is a 6 or an 8, because we've already been there and we've done that. If he's playing as a 6, okay, let's make sure we maximize him. That's been my biggest annoyance with health and just fans in general when they start to consider like midfield threes and we start to add these more really attacking 8s a little bit. But some of the biggest things for me is if you've got Sambi Lakanga down as a 6, he lacks awareness of third man runners. So get him an experienced head to deal with that is positionally excellent. He lacks an ability sometimes to win second balls because he can be dragged wide.
Yeah.
And who can fill in that way? Granit Xhaka, like those two things are the biggest faults with Sambi Lakanga's game. If he's great on the ball, then excellent.
Look,
his fault.
George, I'm gonna be honest. The more the season wears on, this is the season for me. I think it's not his fault. I think and then he obviously being injured has really hurt his chance of performing in his best role. But the more it goes on, mate, I just don't see a place for him in this team going forward. I'm just being honest. I like the kid. I like his ability to play in going forward on the ball in possession. But if you're going to be a 6, I don't see it. And if he's not got the way, he's not going to be as good as any of the 8s that we've gone through. So just me personally, the chances he's going to get to perform and to get into this team and establish himself are getting smaller and smaller now. So I don't know about you, mate, but this is kind of his last chance saloon with Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player, just in terms of being the squad. So,
Yeah,
what do you think?
I'm just more about for me, I'm always somebody that if you're gonna play a player where I disagree with, I'll say my case, but if he's gonna play, I'm gonna maximize you as best as I can.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the solutions that I've got for making sure that Sambi isn't caught out and he isn't, he isn't overfed by the
I'm
opposition.
just sad we don't get to see the El Neni Lakonga ASR experiment. I felt like that
Yeah.
could have been something that really worked, and it could have really the balance is there. You've got all the different profiles
Yes.
you need for a squad.
I agree.
I'm a bit sad that we didn't get to see it. I don't know if the thing is, from what we've seen of Lakonga in terms of comments in the media and from All or Nothing. I just feel like maybe it's just not going to work for him, which is really sad. I like
Well,
the
I
kid.
mean, yeah, no, I agree. And look for me again, like we're not really we kind of put Nelson for a little bit of a debate there. It's not going to be
Hmm.
Nelson. It's very likely to be Gabby Jesus.
Yeah.
And so we are going to have two first team starters in the front 11. And for me, I don't think it's going to be a 0-0. I do think it's going to be a tight game. Again, I've said it. And
Hmm.
I don't think we necessarily escape without them scoring because I think they're going to have more of the ball. Again, I've said that PSV at home are a very different prospect. So my prediction's 2-1. I think it's going to be a tight game. Unfortunately, not a game that everyone's going to love, but I do think it'll become a little bit more comfortable towards the end of the match. But I do have a feeling that they score a goal to make things nervous at some point in some interval. Like I'd love us to go and blitz them. We start really well. We start strong. We have all season. That's going to be super, super important for us going into the game tomorrow. But Curran, mate, like, what's your predictions?
I'm going the same as we said last week in terms of what happened. So 1-0. I think it's not going to be a huge game. So I just feel like there's going to be it'll be I'm going to go Xhaka again. Screw it. He's on a run of form. Let's just
What?
say he's going to score again.
That is good value for Buddy. And really quickly, no, I think in January, part of the we'll talk about this. We'll have a January transfer pod. Don't worry,
Mhm.
everybody. You guys seem to love those. We will have that. But look, I think the World Cup is going to cause a massive premium on transfers in the January transfer window. Not to mention signing marquee players in the middle of a season is nigh on impossible, particularly when they're your MVP of the season of last year. I don't think it's really been done before unless it's a prearranged deal for the following summer. Like even I think Virgil van Dijk is probably the only example
Yeah,
of
he
that
is the
happening.
exception.
And
I mean,
even
when was Allison? Allison was in the summer, wasn't it?
Allison's was in the summer, and Virgil van Dijk
Yeah.
was an exception because they basically had it done in the summer, and they agreed to drag it on to be released in January, right? So I mean, even then, it was just an exception. So for me, I don't see a lot of value in the left wing and the center midfield market in the January transfer window, but I definitely see defensive cover and maybe a pre-contract or two that I've said quite a bit kind of
The
on
only
here.
one,
But
the only one I
my
can think
fantasy
of,
is alive and well in the summer, but
yeah,
I don't think so in January.
the
Sorry, go
only one I can think of is maybe, I mean, I'm not, I quite like Mudryk. I'm not the hugest guy, but I'm thinking someone like Jota from Celtic or something like that. So just a ball striker that's able to fill in a role, to be like our Shaqiri type player in the squad, someone that could just come in and do a job when we need him to. But um, I think that the roles in terms of January, I think more we're looking for cover if we are going to do something. I don't think we're looking for marquee signings. Maybe a Mudryk or a Jota or something like this. But I mean, this is just something that I'm thinking. But I don't think we go marquee. I think marquee is the summer, and we all know if you follow either of us on Twitter what the marquee is. So I think on that note, go on, sign off.
on that note, we have to tie it up. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us and dropping in. Hopefully, we come out with a really good win. Guys, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. You hit the bell for notifications. For all the boys' socials, you can find it here at GeorgeV_AFC. You can find Curran at Curran BOP. Of course, Chris, you can find him at CKAFTBL. And we are Ball Over Passion here at YouTube or on Twitter at BOP Footy. So, thank you so much, guys, for sticking with us again. If you guys, before you guys can go, please drop a like on the video. It really helps the channel. So thank you so much for all of the constructive criticism. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we can go with a really good performance tomorrow to top the group and basically end speculation of us being top of the Europa League group. And we can kind of bust off Zurich as basically a throwaway game before Chelsea. So looking forward to kind of a return to performance. and we'll catch you guys with the review most likely on Friday. But make sure you guys hit that bell so that you know when we do upload, so you'll know when we do. But anyways, guys, thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch you guys on the review on Friday. Peace.